The pharmacy lights flickered like they might give up at any moment. Nate Harper stood just inside the automatic doors of the 24-hour drugstore, staring at the receipt in his hand as if it might change if he looked long enough. $12.43. That was what his bank account held after buying children's ibuprofen and fever strips. Enough for gas to get home. Not enough for mistakes. His phone buzzed again in his pocket. He didn't answer. At home, his 7-year-old daughter was burning with fever, her small body restless beneath blankets that suddenly felt too thin. Mrs. Chun from next door was watching her, because Mrs. Chun always answered the phone, no matter the hour, but every minute Nate stayed away was another minute his chest tightened with guilt. He pushed through the doors and into the night. October in Chicago had teeth. The kind of cold that didn't announce itself loudly, but crept in and settled deep, under jackets and into bones. Nate pulled his collar higher as he crossed the empty parking lot toward his car, the asphalt gleaming faintly under dying streetlights. 2:31 a.m. He unlocked the car, tossed the white paper bag onto the passenger seat, and slid behind the wheel. The heater coughed out air that was technically warm but felt like an insult. Just get home, he told himself. Mia needed him. That was the rule. That was always the rule. He reached for the gear shift, and froze. Across the street, near the old bus stop shelter, something moved. At first, he thought it was trash. A dark shape hunched against the concrete, half hidden in shadow. Then it shifted again, slow and deliberate, and his stomach tightened. A person. The bus stop hadn't been used in years. The city had rerouted the line, painted over the schedule, removed the bench. Everyone in the neighborhood knew no bus came here anymore. The shape moved again, curling tighter. Nate's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He didn't have time for this. His daughter was sick. His neighbor charged by the hour. He worked a warehouse job that didn't forgive lateness or excuses. He had exactly 12 minutes before the next dose of medicine was due. He should drive away. He told himself that firmly. But his eyes drifted back to the bus stop. The woman was sitting on the ground. No, beside her was a wheelchair, tipped awkwardly on its side like it had been discarded. She was trying to pull a thin jacket closer around herself, her movements stiff, inefficient, practiced in a way that suggested she'd done this many times before. Something about the scene didn't sit right. Nate shut off the engine. The sound felt loud in the empty street. He stepped out of the car, the cold biting through his jacket immediately, and crossed the road slowly, careful not to startle her. The closer he got, the clearer it became. She was young, maybe mid-20s, her dark hair tangled and loose around a pale face. Her lips were tinged blue. "Hey," he said gently, keeping his voice low. "You okay?" She didn't look up. "I'm fine," she said after a moment. Her voice was steady but thin. "Bus'll be here soon." Nate glanced at the shelter again, at the blank space where a route map used to be. "They canceled this line," he said quietly. "Couple years back." Her jaw tightened. "Then I'll wait anyway." The wind rattled the plastic panels of the shelter, sharp and unforgiving. Nate crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level. Up close, he could see the tremor in her hands, the exhaustion etched into her face, not just tiredness, but the deeper kind that came from having no expectations left. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. Silence. He tried again. "Miss." She hesitated, then spoke so softly he almost missed it. "Since yesterday." Something twisted in his chest. "That's a long time." She shrugged, the movement barely there. "It gets quieter after midnight." Nate swallowed. He thought of Mia at home, flushed and shivering, and of this woman sitting on concrete that leached heat away with every second. "I'm Nate," he said. "What's your name?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Lena." He nodded. "Okay, Lena." He stood, rubbing his hands together, torn. Every instinct screamed at him to leave, to protect his child, his fragile balance, the life he was barely holding together. But another instinct, older and quieter, refused to let him walk away. "I don't have much time," he said honestly. "My daughter's sick. I need to get home." She nodded as if that settled everything. "Then go." He exhaled slowly. "I can't." She finally looked up at him, eyes sharp with suspicion. "Why not?" "Because if I do," he thought, "I'll be the kind of man my daughter learns not to trust." Instead, he said, "Because it's freezing, and you've been here too long, and I won't sleep tonight if I leave you here." She laughed once, short and humorless. "There's always a catch." He met her gaze. "There isn't." Her eyes narrowed. "Nobody helps for free." I'm not helping for free, he said. I'm helping because I'm human and you're freezing. She studied him like she was searching for cracks, for the angle she was missing.
What do you want? She asked. Money? Something else?
The implications sat heavy between them.
Nate shook his head.
I want you not to die of exposure. Silence stretched. Finally she said, 3 hours.
What? Somewhere warm, she said.
Just 3 hours.
Then you drop me wherever. No questions.
He didn't like it. 3 hours wouldn't fix anything. But pushing harder felt wrong.
Okay, he said. 3 hours.
He righted the wheelchair, surprised by how light it was, and held it steady while she transferred with careful, practiced movements. When she took his hand, her fingers were ice cold.
He opened the car door for her.
She paused, looking at the seat, then at him. This is where you say it, right?
The condition. Nate shook his head. Come with me, he said. 3 words.
They sounded small in the cold air. But as Lena settled into the passenger seat and he folded the wheelchair into the back beside his daughter's car seat, Nate felt something shift, subtle, irreversible. As he pulled away from the curb, the bus stop disappeared behind them, swallowed by darkness. And for the first time that night, Lena closed her eyes. If quiet moments of kindness like this resonate with you, I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. The car filled with heat slowly, unevenly, like it was thinking about whether to cooperate. Lena sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the windshield as streetlights slid past in long yellow streaks.
She didn't touch the heater vent. She didn't lean back.
Every part of her posture said temporary, cautious, ready to leave at the first sign of danger.
Nate noticed. He didn't comment.
They drove in silence for several blocks, the city stripped down to concrete and shadow at this hour.
No traffic. No voices.
Just the low hum of the engine and the soft rattle of the heater fighting the cold. My daughter's name is Mia, Nate said eventually, not looking at her.
She's 7. Fever spiked tonight. Lena nodded once. She okay? Getting there. I hope. Another pause. You don't have to talk, he added.
Just thought you should know where we're going. She glanced at him briefly.
You live close. 15 minutes. 20 with lights.
That's farther than 3 hours.
He almost smiled.
You're keeping track. I keep track of everything. The neighborhood changed as they drove north. The buildings dropped lower. The streets narrowed. Front porches replaced storefronts. It wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't comfortable either. The kind of place people drove through without stopping. Nate pulled into a narrow driveway beside a small, aging bungalow. Paint peeled along the siding. One porch step sagged slightly under the weight of years. A single light glowed in the window next door.
That's my place, he said. Lena didn't move.
You're not coming inside yet, he added quickly.
I need to check on Mia first. Pay my neighbor.
You can wait here. I'm not going anywhere, she said dryly. He grabbed the medicine from the seat and jogged toward the front door. The lock clicked loudly in the quiet night. Inside, the house smelled faintly of menthol and laundry detergent. Mrs. Chun opened the door before he could knock, her sharp eyes taking him in.
She's sleeping, she said.
Fever came down some.
Thank you.
Nate pulled bills from his wallet, wincing. I'm sorry I took so long. Mrs. Chun counted quickly.
You worry too much.
That's what good fathers do. Her gaze flicked past him toward the driveway. You have a guest? Something like that.
She frowned. Be careful. I will.
Nate moved quietly down the hall, easing open Mia's bedroom door. She lay sprawled across the bed, blankets kicked aside, breathing slow and even. The thermometer read just over normal. Relief hit him so hard his knees almost gave out. He kissed her forehead, tucked the blankets back around her, and left the medicine on the nightstand. When he returned outside, Lena was exactly where he'd left her, staring straight ahead. Fever's down, he said as he opened her door.
She's sleeping. Good.
He unfolded the wheelchair, set it firmly on the pavement.
Ready.
She hesitated, then transferred with careful efficiency, movements practiced and proud. He noticed how she refused help unless absolutely necessary. Inside, the house felt small but warm. A couch that had seen better decades. A coffee table scarred with crayon marks. Toys clustered in one corner, evidence of a life built around a child. Lena took it in silently. You can sit, Nate said. I'll make something hot.
I don't need.
3 hours, he reminded her. Let me at least make tea.
She didn't argue again.
He filled a kettle, set it on the stove, and pulled down 2 mismatched mugs. When he returned, Lena had transferred to the couch, the wheelchair folded neatly beside her like it was part of her body. She was looking at a framed photo on the side table.
That's Mia, she said quietly. And you?
Zoo trip. She wanted to see elephants.
She looks happy. She is.
The kettle whistled. Nate poured water over tea bags, carried the mugs to the coffee table. Lena cradled hers like it might disappear. Steam fogged her glasses, then her eyes. Thank you, she said after a moment.
For this.
You're welcome. Silence settled, but it wasn't empty.
Just careful.
How long have you been in the chair? Nate asked, keeping his voice neutral. Lena's shoulders stiffened.
Couple years. What happened?
She stared into her mug.
Accident. Construction site.
Fell 3 stories.
He waited.
Company blamed me, she continued flatly. Insurance denied it. Lawyer wanted money I didn't have.
And then
everything else. He nodded, understanding more than he wanted to. The clock on the wall ticked softly.
3:12 a.m.
You don't have to go back out there, Nate said. Lena's laugh was short.
I do. You don't.
She looked at him, really looked at him this time.
You have a kid.
You don't bring strangers into that.
She's safe.
You don't know me.
I know enough.
That's what scares me. He stood and pulled a blanket from the hall closet, draped it gently over her shoulders.
She flinched, then relaxed. Just for tonight, he said. Couch. Warm.
Tomorrow we figure something else out.
She swallowed.
You're bad at temporary.
Yeah, he admitted. I am.
Her eyes shone too brightly.
She turned away.
If this moment is pulling at something inside you, tapping like help stories like this reach others who need them. Nate turned off the lights, checked the locks, and glanced once more toward Mia's room. Lena lay curled on the couch, blanket tucked to her chin, breathing shallow but steady. 3 hours, she'd said. But as Nate lay awake in his too small bedroom, listening to the furnace rattle and the house settle, he knew one thing for certain. Nothing about this felt temporary. Morning arrived softly today. Nate woke before his alarm, listening for the sounds that told him what kind of day it would be. No coughing from Mia's room. No restless whimpers. Just the tick of the kitchen clock and the furnace breathing warm air into old vents. Then he remembered the couch. In the dim living room, Lena slept curled beneath the blanket, hair spilled across the cushion. Her folded wheelchair sat beside her like something she didn't trust to belong indoors. Nate stood there longer than he meant to. He still didn't know if he'd done the right thing. He just knew he hadn't been able to leave her. He started coffee, then checked on Mia. She was calm, breathing easy, forehead cool. The thermometer read normal. Relief hit Nate so hard he had to exhale slowly to keep it from turning into tears. Minutes later, Mia padded into the kitchen in dinosaur pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction.
Daddy, she whispered. Hey, bug. Nate crouched. How do you feel? Better.
Can I have cereal?
Yes. Medicine first.
Mia took the spoonful, then poured cereal. Halfway through, she paused and stared into the living room.
Who's that? She asked. Nate's chest tightened. That's Lena. She needed help last night.
She's staying for a little while.
Mia studied him, serious. Is she nice? I think so.
We'll be polite and we'll be careful.
Okay.
Okay, Mia said, as if it were simple.
The voices woke Lena.
She snapped from sleep to alertness fast, eyes landing on Mia, shoulders tensing. I should go, Lena said quickly. You're not going anywhere hungry, Nate replied.
Coffee's on. I can make toast.
Lena's gaze flicked between Nate and the child. I don't want to be in the way. Mia turned with her spoon raised.
Hi. Lena blinked. Hi. I'm Mia, Mia announced.
Daddy says you're staying on our couch. Lena's mouth tightened, unsure what expression was expected. Just for a little while.
Okay.
Mia returned to her cereal like the matter was settled. Nate made toast and set out jam. Lena transferred to the table chair without asking for help, jaw clenched with effort she tried to hide. Nate pretended not to notice and poured coffee into a chipped mug. They ate in a careful quiet. Mia filled most of it with chatter about school and a volcano project. I need baking soda and vinegar, Mia said, and Daddy thinks baking soda is the same as baking powder.
It was one time, Nate protested.
Lena's eyes softened as she watched them. When Mia ran off to get dressed, Lena set her mug down.
She's wonderful, she said. She is, Nate replied.
And she's been through enough.
Lena's gaze sharpened.
So have you. Nate rinsed plates at the sink. I have to take her to the bus. Then I go to work.
And I leave, Lena said. Nate turned. Why?
Because I shouldn't be here, she said. Not with your kid.
Not in your house.
That's not an answer. Lena's fingers tightened on the table edge. People don't want someone like me around.
Someone like you, Nate repeated gently.
The kind who ends up on sidewalks, Lena said, voice flat.
The kind people avoid.
The kind they assume is trouble. Nate dried his hands slowly.
You're not trouble. You're a person. Lena swallowed.
You don't know what happened after the accident. Nate pulled out the chair across from her and Saturday, tell me.
If you want.
For a long moment she stared at the tabletop, then began, careful and clinical, like facts were safer than feelings.
I was 21.
Third year in electrical engineering. I wired commercial buildings at night to pay tuition. I was good at it.
Her jaw tightened.
Then a scaffold failed.
3 stories.
I woke up in a hospital bed and my legs were gone.
Nate stayed silent.
The company blamed me, she continued. They produced safety paperwork I'd never seen.
Training logs. Checklists.
Suddenly the accident was my fault on paper, so insurance denied everything. She let out a thin breath. Fighting it costs money. Being injured costs more.
You lost your apartment, Nate said quietly. First. Then school.
Her eyes flashed with anger. Then friends, because friends get tired of your life being heavy.
Shelters are full.
Waiting lists don't stop winter. Nate felt a slow, bitter heat in his chest. That's not right.
Right doesn't pay bills, Lena said.
And people like to believe bad things happen for a reason. So they decide it must have been something I did. Mia burst back in with her backpack, talking fast. Daddy, the bus is early, oh.
Bye, Lena. Bye, Mia, Lena said softer.
Mia looked at Nate. Don't burn the house down.
I won't, Nate promised.
When Mia left, the house went quiet again, like it was holding its breath. Lena stared at her hands. I didn't mean to dump that on you. I'm glad you told me, Nate said. Because now I understand why you think there's always a catch.
She looked up, defensive. Isn't there? Nate shook his head. Not here. Lena's voice cracked.
Surviving isn't living.
No, Nate agreed.
But it's the first step back to living. He stood and grabbed his work jacket. I'll be back after work.
Stay today. Rest. Eat. Shower if you want.
Clean towels are in the hall closet. Lena's voice came out small. Why are you doing this? Nate paused, searching for the simplest truth. Because someone once helped me when I was drowning. And because I don't want Mia to grow up thinking we drive past people who need us. He left with doubts in his chest, but Lena's words followed him down the steps. People like me don't get to just stay. And Nate realized the cruelest thing the world had taken from her wasn't her legs. It was her belief that she deserved a place at anyone's table. Nate expected the house to feel different when he came home. All day at the warehouse, he'd worked with one ear tuned to his phone, half expecting it to buzz with bad news. Lena gone, Mia sick again, Mrs. Chun furious. The kind of chaos that waited whenever life got too quiet. But when he opened the front door, warmth met him first. Heat from the furnace, the faint smell of soap, and the low murmur of a children's show playing on the TV. Lena sat in the living room with one of Mia's space books open in her lap. The blanket was folded neatly over the armrest. The toys in the corner were stacked instead of scattered. Nate's shoulders loosened before he could stop them.
You didn't leave, he said. Lena looked up, cautious.
I said I'd stay today.
Yeah, Nate murmured. You did. He kicked off his boots.
How was the day? She hesitated, then answered honestly.
Warm.
The word sounded like confession. I took a shower, she added quickly. I didn't use much water.
Nate stared at her.
You can use the water, Lena. I'm not used to, she stopped, jaw tightening.
Never mind.
Mia got home in 20 minutes. Nate started dinner with what he had, pasta, jar sauce, frozen broccoli, cheap and filling. Lena hovered in the kitchen doorway like she didn't trust herself to enter.
I can help, she said. You're a guest, Nate replied.
I'm a person with hands, Lena said, dry enough that it almost sounded like humor. He handed her the broccoli. She sorted through it, then wiped down the counter and table without being asked. Quiet motions, like she was trying to earn the right to exist in the room. When Mia burst through the door, backpack swinging, the house changed instantly. Daddy! She shouted, then froze at the sight of Lena.
Oh. Hi. Hi, Lena said, gentle.
Mia stepped closer, studying her with open curiosity. You're still here.
I am.
Mia nodded, satisfied, and launched into her day. Volcanoes, spelling tests, Emma's new puppy. Nate listened, but his attention kept snagging on Lena's face, how she watched Mia like she was something fragile and miraculous. At dinner Mia declared, Daddy doesn't understand volcanoes.
I understand plenty, Nate protested.
You thought baking soda was baking powder, Mia said, pleased. Lena's mouth twitched. Mia pointed her fork at Lena. Will you help me make my volcano erupt? Lena glanced at Nate, asking permission without words.
Nate nodded.
If you want to.
I'd like to, Lena said.
After dishes, they spread materials on the kitchen table. Lena explained the reaction simply, letting Mia ask questions, letting her feel smart. Nate watched Mia's shoulders relax, the way they always did when she felt safe. When Mia finally yawned, Nate sent her to brush her teeth. Lena began stacking supplies with practiced neatness.
Thank you, Nate said. Lena paused. For what?
For being here, he said. And for seeing her. Her eyes lowered. It feels good to matter. You do matter, Nate said. She didn't answer, but her throat worked like the words pressed against something sore. That night, after Mia was asleep, Nate found Lena in the living room staring at the framed zoo photo. She touched the glass lightly, then pulled her hand back like she'd done something wrong. Mrs. Chun thinks I'm making a mistake, Nate said.
Lena's head turned.
Maybe she's right.
Nate frowned.
You think you're a mistake?
No, Lena said, then hesitated.
I think the situation is risky.
You have a child.
You barely know me. If anything went wrong.
It won't, Nate said.
You can't know that, Lena snapped, sudden sharpness flashing. She inhaled, steadied herself.
Sorry.
I'm just used to things going wrong. Nate sat down in the armchair, tired down to his bones. If you want to leave tomorrow, I'll drive you somewhere safer. Lena's laugh was thin. There is no safer when you're poor. The words landed heavy. Before Nate could respond, his phone buzzed on the coffee table.
Unknown number.
Chicago area code. He stared at it, then answered.
Hello.
Mr. Harper. A woman's voice said, professional, calm. My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm an attorney. I represent Lena Ward. Nate's blood went cold.
He looked at Lena.
Her face drained, eyes widening.
Yes, he managed.
Lena listed your address as her current residence, Walsh continued. I'm calling to confirm that's accurate and to inform you that you may be contacted as part of Discovery.
Nate swallowed.
Discovery. We've located a witness, Walsh said. A former employee from the job site. His statement could reopen the case. But it will bring attention. Investigators. Questions. Lena's hands trembled on the blanket. The defense will scrutinize her current living situation, Walsh added. They may imply motives. They may try to intimidate.
Nate's jaw tightened.
Let them try.
Walsh paused. Please talk to Lena.
She may not want to involve you or your child.
I will, Nate said.
Thank you for calling. When he hung up, the room felt smaller. Nate could already picture it, strangers in suits on his porch, questions that twisted kindness into suspicion. He imagined Mia's teacher being asked about a woman she just met, imagined whispers at the bus stop, imagined his mother's voice saying I told you so. For a flash, fear tried to shove him backward into the safer choice. Mind your business, protect your own. Then he saw Lena's hands shaking, and the fear turned into something steadier. He'd driven past enough suffering for one lifetime.
Lena's voice cracked.
I didn't think they'd find me.
They did, Nate said.
I'm going to ruin your life, she whispered. Nate crossed the room and crouched beside her chair.
No.
You're going to get your life back. Lena stared at him, fear fighting hope in her eyes. And Nate realized kindness had consequences. Not the kind that made him regret it. The kind that demanded he keep choosing it anyway. The scrutiny arrived quietly at first. It began with questions that sounded harmless enough. A voicemail from an unfamiliar number asking Nate to confirm his address. An email from Mia's school requesting a brief meeting to clarify a routine inquiry. A polite knock on the door one afternoon when Nate was still at work and Lena answered, heart pounding, to find a man in a suit holding a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He asked how long she'd been staying there. He asked if she paid rent. He asked how she knew Nate Harper. Lena answered honestly, because lying felt like giving them permission to turn her into something she wasn't. When the man finally left, she locked the door and sat on the couch, hands clenched so tightly her fingers went numb. By the time Nate came home that night, she was already braced for anger. They came, she said the moment he stepped inside. Nate set his keys down slowly. I figured they would. They asked about Mia, Lena added. Not directly. But they asked if I spent time alone with her. Something sharp and protective snapped into place inside Nate's chest. What did you say?
That I care about her.
That I'm never alone with her without you knowing. That I'm careful. Her voice shook. I told them the truth. Nate exhaled, long and controlled. Good. That's all we do.
This isn't fair, Lena said.
They're turning your kindness into something suspicious. They can try. That night, after Mia was asleep, Nate sat at the kitchen table with Jennifer Walsh on speakerphone. Lena listened from the couch, knees pulled tight, feeling like her presence contaminated the room. They're going to push hard, Jennifer said. Your former employer has deep pockets and no interest in admitting fault. They'll attack credibility wherever they can. By attacking my family, Nate said flatly. Yes, Jennifer replied. Which is why I need to ask something difficult. Lena, if you want to step back, change living arrangements temporarily, it could reduce pressure.
Lena's throat closed. She looked at Nate, panic flaring. I can leave.
Nate shook his head immediately.
No. Jennifer paused.
Mr. Harper.
No, Nate repeated.
She doesn't get punished for surviving. There was silence on the line, then Jennifer sighed.
All right.
Then we prepare for escalation. Escalation came faster than expected. Morrison Construction's lawyers filed motions questioning Lena's credibility. They suggested her homelessness proved instability. They implied she'd exaggerated her injuries for sympathy. They hinted, never outright, always carefully, that Nate's involvement created an appearance of impropriety.
The words burned.
Lena read the filings late into the night, jaw clenched, hands shaking. They're rewriting my life, she said. Turning me into a story that fits their defense. Nate poured her tea, steady despite the rage coiled tight in his chest. They don't get to decide who you are. But juries listen to stories, Lena whispered. And theirs paints me as desperate. As someone who attaches herself to anyone who'll help.
Nate met her eyes.
Then we tell the truth louder. The deposition was scheduled for a Thursday morning downtown. Nate took the day off work without hesitation. He drove Lena to the law office, gripping the steering wheel while she stared out the window, face pale but determined. Inside the conference room, Morrison's legal team sat polished and confident, their questions sharp-edged beneath professional smiles. They asked about the accident. They asked about her education. They asked about her homelessness. Then they asked about Nate. Isn't it true, one lawyer said smoothly, that you moved into Mr. Harper's home shortly after meeting him?
Yes, Lena replied.
And that he provides you housing without payment?
Yes.
Would you say that arrangement benefits you financially?
Lena inhaled.
It benefits me because I'm warm and safe. Not because I'm exploiting anyone. The lawyer smiled thinly. And Mr. Harper benefits emotionally, does he not?
Nate's hands tightened under the table. I don't know, Lena said carefully.
You'd have to ask him. The questions continued, circling, probing, trying to reduce her life to a transaction. When it finally ended, Lena felt hollowed out. Outside, she leaned heavily against Nate's car, eyes burning. I hate them, she said softly. I know. They made it sound like I used you. Nate opened the passenger door for her.
You didn't.
They made it sound like I put Mia at risk. Nate crouched to her eye level.
You didn't. Ever.
On the drive home, Lena broke. I can't do this, she said, voice cracking. I can't keep dragging you and your daughter through this. I'll leave. I'll disappear again if I have to.
Nate pulled over.
He turned off the engine, then turned to face her fully. No, he said, not loudly, but with a steadiness that cut through her panic. That's exactly what they want. They're hurting you, she whispered. They're testing me, Nate corrected. And I'm not failing. He took her hands, grounding her.
Lena, look at me.
If I wanted the easy road, I'd have driven past you that night.
I didn't.
And I'm not driving past you now.
Her eyes filled. Why?
Because integrity isn't convenient, he said. And because my daughter is watching the kind of man I choose to be. Silence settled between them, heavy but resolute. 2 weeks later, the settlement offer arrived. $250,000. No admission of wrongdoing.
Confidentiality clause.
Take it, Morrison's lawyers urged.
Move on.
Lena stared at the number, heart racing. It was more money than she'd had since before the accident.
Enough to rent an apartment.
Enough to disappear quietly. But it wouldn't be justice. Jennifer's voice was calm. It's a low offer. They think you're scared.
Lena looked at Nate. He didn't speak.
He didn't tell her what to do. He simply waited, trusting her to choose.
She straightened in her chair. We counter, she said. The room went still.
800,000, Lena continued. And a public admission of safety violations. Jennifer's eyebrows rose. That's aggressive. So was ruining my life, Lena replied. Morrison's response was immediate and furious.
They threatened trial.
They threatened delays. They threatened to drag everything into the open.
Lena didn't flinch.
Neither did Nate. At the final settlement conference, tension crackled across the polished table. Morrison's lead attorney leaned forward, voice sharp. You're overplaying your hand. Lena met his gaze. I finally have won. The offer rose.
500,000.
Then 6. Then, after a long silence, $700,000. Plus a written admission of safety failures.
Plus mandatory audits. Jennifer looked at Lena. This is real.
Lena's hands trembled.
She looked at Nate.
He squeezed her fingers once, steady.
The choice was hers.
And for the first time since the accident, Lena chose not from fear, but from strength.
Yes, she said. We accept.
The call came on a Tuesday morning. Nate was halfway through unloading a shipment at the warehouse when his phone vibrated in his pocket. He almost ignored it. Supervisors didn't love interruptions, but something in his chest tightened before he even looked at the screen.
Jennifer Walsh.
He stepped aside, heart pounding, and answered. They settled, Jennifer said without preamble. The words didn't register at first.
What? Nate asked.
Morrison Construction agreed to the terms. $700,000. Public admission of safety violations. Mandatory third-party audits for 5 years. She exhaled, the sound bright with relief.
Lena won.
The pallet jack slipped from Nate's hand and clattered to the concrete floor.
She won. He repeated, voice unsteady.
Yes, Jennifer said gently. She stood her ground, and they folded. I'm emailing the paperwork now. Nate didn't remember clocking out. He didn't remember the drive home. He only remembered the feeling, like something knotted tight inside his chest had finally loosened. Lena was in the living room when he burst through the door, sorting mail at the coffee table.
She looked up, startled. What's wrong? She asked.
He crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her wheelchair.
They settled, he said. You won. All of it. For a heartbeat, Lena just stared at him blank. Then her hands flew to her mouth. Her voice broke.
Are you serious?
Completely, Nate said. 700,000. Admission. Audits. Everything.
Something in her collapsed. She sobbed, deep, racking cries that came from a place she'd been holding shut for years. Nate wrapped his arms around her without thinking, holding her while she shook, while relief and grief and vindication poured out all at once. I didn't think this was possible, she whispered into his shoulder.
I really didn't.
You did this, Nate said softly. You refused to disappear. When the tears finally slowed, Lena pulled back, eyes red but shining. So, what happens now? She asked.
Nate hesitated.
Now you leave, a quiet voice in his head whispered. Now you get your life back. You get choices, he said carefully.
Real ones.
Lena nodded, but her expression was unreadable. That night, after Mia was asleep, they sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them suddenly loud. I talked to Jennifer, Lena said. She says I should think about housing. Maybe going back to school. Starting fresh. That makes sense, Nate replied, forcing steadiness into his voice. She mentioned other cities, Lena continued. Places with better programs.
Cheaper rent. Nate swallowed. Yeah.
Silence stretched.
Finally, Lena turned to him.
Is that what you want? He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized he couldn't lie.
No, he said.
But I thought it might be what you want.
Her brow furrowed.
Why would you think that?
Because now you don't need us, he said quietly.
You don't need this house or this situation. And I didn't want you to feel trapped by gratitude.
Lena stared at him, stunned. Trapped? She repeated.
Nate, I stayed because I chose to. I'm still choosing it. His heart thudded painfully. You don't have to.
I know, she said. That's the point.
She rolled closer, close enough that their knees nearly touched. I lost everything once, she said.
My body.
My career.
My sense of worth.
When you found me, I wasn't just cold, I was done. And then you gave me warmth, dignity, and a place where no one asked what I could still offer.
She took his hands.
I don't want a fresh start somewhere else, she said.
I want this life.
I want you.
I want Mia.
The words hit him like a wave. You're sure? He asked, barely breathing.
I'm sure, she said.
The money doesn't change that. It just means I can stay because I want to, not because I have nowhere else to go. Nate laughed then, shaky and disbelieving, and pulled her into his arms. I love you, he said into her hair. I've been terrified to say it. She smiled through tears.
Good.
Because I love you too. They didn't hear Mia until she was standing in the doorway, pajama-clad and wide-eyed. Are you hugging? She asked suspiciously.
Nate froze.
Lena did too.
Then Mia grinned.
Does this mean Lena's staying forever? Lena looked at Nate, silently asking.
He nodded.
Yes, Lena said softly. If that's okay with you. Mia launched herself forward, wrapping her arms around Lena's neck.
I knew it, she declared.
Families don't leave.
From then on, things moved slowly, and then all at once.
Lena used part of the settlement to make the house accessible. Ramps replaced steps.
Doorways widened.
The bathroom became a place she could navigate independently. She insisted on contributing, on being a partner, not a guest. They cleared out the spare bedroom and made it hers. Mia helped, of course, offering opinions on everything. This room needs more light, Mia said seriously. Lena reads important books.
Lena laughed. We'll fix that. Months passed.
The house filled with routines that felt solid and real.
Homework at the kitchen table. Movie nights on the couch.
Late-night conversations that didn't feel borrowed anymore. One evening, as winter crept back in, Nate took Lena for a drive. They stopped at the same abandoned bus stop. The shelter was still cracked. The bench still gone. But the concrete didn't feel so heavy anymore. I thought I'd hate coming back here, Lena said.
But I don't. Nate took her hand.
It's just a place now.
Yeah, she said.
It doesn't own me anymore. A year later, standing in their small backyard beneath bare trees, Nate held out a simple ring. Come with me, he said again, smiling. This time, Lena laughed through tears. Always, she answered. They didn't need a big wedding. Just Mia, Mrs. Chun, a few neighbors, and a promise spoken out loud. They became a family not because they were rescued, but because they chose each other, again and again. Years later, when Mia told people how her parents met, she always started the same way.
It was cold, she'd say.
And my dad stopped the car. Because sometimes the smallest decision, the hardest one, becomes the foundation of everything that follows. And sometimes, the people we save don't just survive.
They come home.
If you believe stories about quiet courage, dignity, and chosen family deserve a place in the world, consider subscribing. You're exactly who this channel is for.